So I believe the rabbi left off on page Tez Zayin, which is towards the end of his Dalit, the last paragraph where it says, "Vayuvan al Peter Harav Magid." Okay, so I just to bring us up to speed as to where the Maamer is and what the Maamer is trying to achieve. And I'm sure what I'm about to say isn't, or hopefully it's not all Chidushim, if you've heard a lot of this before, and some of it's based on what the rabbi taught, but just to bring us up to speed so we know what's going on. So the Fidikibb's Maamer quotes this statement to the Zohar. The infinite one extends above to no end and below to no end. And the reason why the Fidikibb quotes that is to tell us that there's a treasure, the Oitzer Lamaila, that's given to the Yidden to fight the battle. That Oitzer, that treasure is Lamaila Mala than Ketz, is the infinite one, extends all the way above. In order to appreciate the virtue of Lamaila than Ketz, the Maamer goes on to explain first what Lamata den Tachlis means. In order to explain the virtue of the infinite extends above, it first explains what it means the infinite extends below. And that's where Oisik Gimel is, to explain how the infinite extends below. Yeah. What's the Fidikibbah doing in this Maamer really in understanding the Zohar? Because the Zohar really says three things. Oirin Soif says the infinite light. That's number one. Number two, Lamaila den Ketz extends above to no end. That's number one. That's number two. And number three, Lamata den Tachlis goes below to no end. Why am I saying it's three things? Because there's a shtickle chiddush in the way the Fidikibbah understands the statement of the Zohar. The statement of the Zohar could have been understood to really be saying one thing. The infinite, in what state the infinite, how is infinite infinite? Because it extends above and extends below. But the way the Fidikibbah teaches it is three different things. When you say Oyer and Soif, when you say there's infinite already extends everywhere. So what's added by the second and third statement that extends above and extends below? You already said Oyer and Soif. You already said it's infinite. Infinite is infinite. So what's the Fidikibbah explain? The Fidikibbah is explaining is like this. The infinite being infinite is really infinite irrespective of where it extends. So I'll give you a dugma, a mashal, which he doesn't give in the Maamer, but it's a mashal taken from elsewhere. If I say that 1 + 1 = 2, it's a statement. This statement, because it's not defined by physicality, it's everywhere. 1 + 1 = 2. Where is that idea? Where's that concept? It's true everywhere in this universe. Now, the fact that it's true everywhere in this universe is irrespective of what's in this universe. Whether this cup is here or not, it's irrelevant. Because 1 + 1 = 2 is everywhere. So when I say that 1 + 1 = 2 is everywhere, it's not in everything. It's everywhere despite anything. So if you say that the Eibush is infinite, Hashem is present everywhere, irrespective of what happens to exist everywhere, or whether nothing exists everywhere, or anywhere, because the infinite is infinite. But then when you say the infinite is Lamaila den Ketz Lamata den Tachlis, so now you're saying the infinite is within something. So it's a greater chiddush. It's not just infinite irrespective of what exists, but within the levels of above and below, there too is infinite. It's almost as if you're saying 1 + 1 = 2 exists inside this table.
Not just theoretical that the Eibush is infinite,
but
there's creation and that doesn't take away from infinite.
But there's infinite even in the creation.
Yeah.
Not just that it's infinite irrespective of creation. So Oyer Soif on its own is irrespective of what exists. But then when you say Lamaila den Ketz Lamata den Tachlis, now you're saying the infinite exists within the realm of something that can be defined as above and below. That's already a bigger chiddush. Yeah. Then in Lamata den Tachlis, so this is the Fidikibbah's Maamer. What Rebbe is l'chora being machadish here in this Maamer is two things. In the way the Fidik Rebbe explains in Oisif Gimel Lamata den Tachlis, that the Eibish's infinite expression exists within the realm of going below. And it follows in this thinking. So there's two things that is machadish here, and you can kind of get lost if you read through it. It's you have to like pick up on whether it says Yesh Leimar, and no, but that's the chiddush. Like it's hard sometimes to see it. So the first is at the beginning of Ois Beis. Beginning of Ois Beis on page at Aleph. Yeah, another element of the Eibush, they're invested within creation going down below. Not just that Hashem creates infinitely below, right? Which that itself would have been a chiddush, that the infinite is not indifferent to what exists. On the contrary, he expresses infinite by the fact that he's engaged to create infinite creations. Right? That was Oisud Beis, that was last year's Maimer. But that already itself is not, it's Taka the Oyer and Soif invested within the realm of creation to create infinite creation. But that doesn't mean that he himself, in his infiniteness, is invested in the creation, but only if there's infinite product of him. That's his havos. Right? So that's chiddush number one in Lamata Ten Tachlis. Chiddush number one in the fact that the Eibishter extends in his infiniteness to be within the realm of creation. In the below is the fact that he creates infinitely. But that means there's infinite product from him. He's still not inside within the below, within the creation. And it comes therefore the chiddush of Oisud Gimel, the way the Rebbe learns it. Ela b'negel is bashis v'gilui Oren Soif. And how does Rebbe tie is bashis v'gilui Oren Soif? So look at the top of page in Beis. Top of the page in Beis, and this is really the big chiddush the Maimer. The point here is not just that the infinite has invested within a defined system of ishtalshlus to no end. And that's why it's called Ein Sof. Because if that's what it was, then the Ein Sof itself, the infinite itself, is still not within creation. But he's called Ein Sof because not only does he create infinitely, but because Hishtalshlus goes infinitely. But Hishtalshlus itself is not Ein Sof. Hishtalshlus itself is Hagbala. But the Hagbala goes infinitely. Just like the creation goes infinitely. So a way to think about this is al derech, when we say that numbers go infinitely. When you say numbers go infinitely, what do you mean that numbers go infinitely? At what point do you hit the number infinite? Never do. What you really mean when you say that numbers go infinitely is that the finite of numbers hasn't stopped yet. But each individual number is still finite. Right? Each individual number is still finite, even if it's number Google plus a million, whatever the number is, the highest number is that we have a name for. That number is still a finite number. You can add number one after. So in was besteht the infinite? What makes it infinite? Because it hasn't stopped yet. It can still go more. Right? And that would be a chiddush enough if we were to say that the infinite, how is it Ein Sof? Because it's a ribur ishtalshlus, because it never ends. Because the finite nature of ishtalshlus never stops. So it's more than just hisavos, where there's an infinite production, but it infinitely evolves. But then Machadish says, no, that's not the Taijish Bashas Begimli. Even as he finds himself within those finite states, and that's the big chiddush here. That even as he finds himself within these finite spaces, there too his whole infiniteness is there. That's already a bigger chiddush. And that's why the whole beginning half of the Maimon, we go through this whole Haskalah about Olamas Ein Sof versus Olamas Atzilus versus Olamas Biyah. What's the point he's trying to make? The point he's saying is, because he starts off by saying that there's three classes. There's Olamas L'Shamas and Olakos, right? Which is Ak, Atzilus, and Biyah. But then he goes on to say the Fidik Rebbe insists there's two categories. Because Atzilus and Olamas Ein Sof, there's no big chiddush that there's his pashas v'gilui there, that the infinite is invested within that realm. Because over there it's Olam Achdos, over there it's Olam of oneness. There's no separation yet. There's nothing that says I exist. So if there's nothing that says I exist independent of the Eibishter, then why can't the Eibishter's infinite be there? Good, so it's there. But once you get into Olam Biyah, and there's a plate, and there's Nefradim, which means everything in Olam Biyah says I exist. And therefore, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, it's all the same Chiddush. Because they all say I exist. In other words, if the Vart was that the Ishtalshlus goes on forever, right? So then each time you added a number, it indicates that the Ein Sof hasn't finished yet. So it indicates the Ein Sofness. That's not the Vart over here. The Vart over here is not that the infinite, that the finite doesn't stop. The Vart over here is that even in a place that's separate from the infinite, there too the infinite finds itself. So therefore all of Biyah is the same thing. Because as long as you say I exist, you're already a contradiction to the fact that the infinite's in there, and yet the infinite's still in there.
So then why does he then go through the Keshach and Mazalas and all the...
Oh, so that's going to come in the next part of the Maimer. So the next part of the Maimer is to say that not only do things that say that I exist or also have the infinite invested in it, but even things that deny the infinite also have the infinite in it. That's why he brings up Parai, as we're going to learn, which, okay, so that's Chiddush number one that Rebbe is learning. That the infinite nature, whatever that means, but the infinite nature itself finds itself, not just that it extends for forever, for no end, but that its infinite nature itself is invested within all of these Hagbalas, which is l'chura, the difference between Hispashtus versus Gilui. Hispashtus means it expands to no end. What's the Chiddush of Gilui? The way that was teaching it here, l'chura, because especially, right, the elements of Atzilus and Ein Sof, it's not a Chiddush that they're Kli for the Ein Sof because they're Olam Achtos. There's no Nefradim. No one says I exist there. It's all miyuchid with the Lakus. Right? What's the Vart over here, l'chura? The Vart over here of Gilui is that it's received within the realm of the Makabel. It's al derech. It's al derech what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Ches when it gets to Soviv. Soviv is Behelam. Why is Soviv Behelam? Explains Alter Rebbe in Perek Ches. Not because Soviv doesn't exist. Soviv exists everywhere. But Soviv exists everywhere the same way 1 + 1 = 2 exists everywhere. It's not within everything. It's everywhere despite everything. So that would be his pashtus. It's not Gilui, it's Helam. It's Behelam, even though it's Taka here, but it's Behelam because it's not, the Kliya Makabel is not aware of the fact that it's here. And Gilui is a Taich that even within the realm of your existence, even within that, you can appreciate it. So the Pel is not just his pashtus, but moreover is Begilui. That even within the realm of the Nefradim, even within the realm of the Lamata and Tachlis, even in that is the Ein Sof. Not just that the Ein Sof extends ad Ein Tachlis.
It's not Megillah, it can be so to speak, in a way. Right?
So this is the in some ways the whole struggle of Maimer. What's the pshat is that in Nefradim, but at the same time it's also Begilui within that. What does it even mean? So the Rebbe says it in 2 words at the end of the Maimer here, and they in this Hanacha they put it in parentheses. I don't know why. It would seem like it's the whole point of the Maimer, l'chura, and it comes in the Fidigar's Maimer in the next Oisius, which is because of that, different matter how far a person has gone, there's always hope, because the Ein Sof exists in all of its glory in that place. Which is why really the whole Maimer is a very hopeful Maimer. The whole Maimer is a hopeful Maimer, because now when you stand it this way. What's the Fidigar saying when he's bringing this whole mashal of Parai, denying Alakus? What's the point? To tell you how bad Parai is? That wasn't the point. The point is, even in a state of denial like Parai, even there the Ein Sof is found. And therefore, even if you find yourself in a state like Parai, you still have hope. Because the Ein Sof is found even in a Parai who's denying. That's the whole point, as everyone's going to learn. So that's l'chora Chiddush number 1 that we're trying to be machadash here. And Chiddush number 2 comes in the beginning of Ois Daled, which is where we are. We're in the end of Ois Daled, but this is where he's going. After he quotes right, for this first point, this is the Rabbi gave a mashal about the 3 different people who see the same person, who see the Rebbe, right? That's the whole point. It's the same infinite, even in the finite little details, right? That was the Nakuda there. So if you look at the beginning of Ois Daled, After he quotes the Frierdiker Rabbi, he says, V'yesh leimar. So this is the Rebbe's Chiddush. Bebir heb shechanyanim. The kivin shebaklalos am shech hedol lemodaber edis neshamas yisrael v'es favori dasam. Am shech zelakus lamata. Skip the parentheses. B'hech leimar. Shekol nyanim meshnem gan mitzvah b'nei Yisrael. What's he saying? That all of these nyanim that we just said about lamata din tachlis, that even as they come into the place of nifradim, where we say I exist, and even in that place, the infinite in all of its ein soifness exists in that place. Al derez has been a yid. So even if a yid says I exist, even if a yid becomes a chas v'shalom aparay, which as we're going to learn, that's what Rebbe is saying, is the yeshiv oil. If you think Rebbe mentioned the two examples of the yeshiv oil who denies Elokus as he learns Torah, and the businessman who denies Elokus as he gets the Eibish's bracha. He's the comparison to Paray. So even in that yid, the Ein Sof exists lamata din tachlis, and therefore he also has hope. That's Chiddush number 2 in Rebbe's Maamre here. That when the Frierdiker talks about the state of Yidden in the negative, the point is not just to say how far Elokus can go, because that's his pashtus. But the point is his pashtus the gilui. The point is that even in the lowest place of finitude, the whole infinite exists there. And if even that Yid is all the way at the end of the line, he too has the Ein Sof lamata din tachlis. And therefore he too has hope. That's Chiddush number 2 in Rebbe's learning in his Maamre. It becomes very, very hopeful in that way. And L'chura, the next paragraph in Oisha Dalet, like in the Hemshech Inyanim, what's they were trying to do here? Where there's this whole biur about the Chad B'dara, the one in a generation who have all the neshamas included in him. Remember this part? Yeah, that's the last thing I spoke about. That most neshamas are neshamas of biyah, right? But some neshamas Chad B'dara, one in a generation, are neshamas of atzilus. That's what the Frierdiker said. And Rebbe gives a whole beard about where the neshamas come from and whether they're higher than Torah, yichud of ava, tipa from ava or not. What's l'chora going on here? I saw someone else who said a similar beard. And Pashtas is what the Rebbe is trying to do. Is earlier he said neshamas are from atzilus, right? When he gave the 3 classes of oilmis, neshamas and elokus, neshamas were of atzilus. Yeah. And here he's saying neshamas are of biyah. Right, and that's the whole point. That even the neshama who finds himself in a low state of biyah, he too lamata din tachlis, even too has the infinite exists in him, and so on and so forth. That's the whole point. So, well, which one is it? Is the neshama matzilus? And the pashtus that they were trying to do with this, with the Chad B'dara, is to say that the neshama as it finds itself in the Rebbe's neshama, the way the neshama finds itself kol in the Chad B'dara, that's the neshama as it's pure atzilus. But even the neshama as it comes into biyah and it's separate and it's different, it still has the Chad B'dara element from in it, and therefore even as it's down here, it can still have an infinite invested in him. And that's l'chora what you were asking earlier. This is l'chora the balance that he's trying to do here. And we'll see, especially as Rebbe gives the beer in the mistake of Paray, this idea of like connection to the Rebbe becomes even more clear. So this is where we are in the Maamre. Let's learn now this last paragraph of Oisha Dalet. There's a concept Torah to figure out, to look up the sources that Rebbe cites to, and which part of the sources that Rebbe quotes, because a lot of it is almost a direct quote from the sources. But then the Rebbe adds like a line here, takes out a line there, so it's like a whole Torah to be able to learn how to do that, but it's beyond my skill sets. Okay, but Yuvan al Piteres Magid will understand this idea that the Yid is Pnimius Oilimus, that even though the Yid is from Biyah, most neshamas are from Biyah, therefore the neshamas be'etzem are nefradim. These neshamas, most neshamas are be'etzem nefradim. These neshamas are of otherness, they're of Biyah, they're of the end, they're of the lamata din tachlis. Right, that was the beginning of Oisha Dalet, that all the nyanim lamata din tachlis exist by Yidden also. But at the same time, the Frierdiker goes on to say that these neshamas are pnimius. And as the Rebbe explained it before, because the neshamas of Chad B'dara, which come from Atzilus, are in them is nichlal all the neshamas. And therefore the Yid has the capacity to change the world, because he's from pnimius Olamas. So if you've been up there ever magid, the Bir Maimon Azal, the Medrash says, so the Gemara says, that Malachim can't sing praises to Hashem until the Yid sings praises to Hashem. Shenemar, Baron Yachad Koichve Biker, let all the morning stars sing together. Baron from like sing, do you know? And then the pasuk goes on to say, and then all sons of God shall sing, and all the malachim, the angels. I looked up the Magid. This pasuk is not quoted there. Certainly not in this order. Maybe earlier in the Maimer, in that Maimer, the Magid quotes this pasuk, but not in this sequence. In this sequence, it actually quotes a different pasuk. Anyway, but the rest, the Tzarech Lavan is a direct quote from Eratera. Even though like the Rebbe skips a few lines here and there, but the Tzarech Lavan begins already a direct quote. But this pasuk is not in this sequence. I don't know. Anyway, so the Magid goes on to say the Tzarech Lavan, we have to understand. What's this whole idea that Malachim are waiting for you to say Shira? What do they have to wait for? The Eish the Farash Shabbat explained, continues the Magid, based on by introducing that which we all know, that the Yidden are the first thought that the Eibishter has when he creates. Right? This is the famous Medrash, where the Medrash goes on to say that there's various different things that precede creation. And the Medrash concludes the first thought is of Yidden. So why the metaphor of thought? So explains the Magid that the metaphor of thought is not simply just a metaphor of like, okay, you're thinking a project, so you're thinking about it, right? And therefore, what's the first thought? But rather, as the Magid is going to explain, the idea of thought means that this is the blueprint from which everything else is created by. Just as speech is determined by what you think about. And every word you say began in some thought first. So all of creation, which is through speech, was thought about first. And they reflect and are the result of what you thought about first. So if the first thought is Yidden, that means everything Hashem invested in creation through his speech began in the first thought of Yidden. And that's the Yidden are the source of all creation. That's he's about to explain. Because in thought, there's all the 22 letters exist within thought. And the 5 different ways in which the mouth moves around to produce these 22 letters. Misham, and from this thought, Shadish Kala is the root of all of these words that come out. Why? This is still all the Magid. A person cannot utter any words unless he thinks first. If you're to speak without any thought, then it's incoherent babble and it's lacking all intelligence. So if this world is an intelligent system, that means Hashem thought about it first. What was that thought? Well, the first thought is a Yid. So Nimsa, therefore, the result of this is the Jew, which is called the beginning, the first of Hashem's thoughts. He's the source of all of the worlds, including Malachim, which are created through Hashem's speech. Therefore, and therefore the angel cannot utter anything, cannot sing any song, unless the Yid, who is the source of those malachim, unless they first have the words for Hashem. Because the Yid, the thought of the Yid is the thought process that allowed for the words that created these angels to begin with. Because they're the primary thought. Nimsa says also the Magid. The result is when a Yid begins to say Shira, now the malachim have the power to say Shira. This is the meaning of the opening of the Shira Shirim, which says the Song of Songs. So the simple type of Song of Songs is it's the greatest of all songs. It's the Song of Songs. But Taich is the Magid, no, it's the song that allows for all the other songs. That's Song of Songs. Shir Shir Yisrael, the song of the Yidden, which is what this book Shir Shirim is. It's the cause of all the other songs, the Malachim. End quote from the Magid. What's being added with this word from the Magid? Before he quoted the Magid, at the end of the last paragraph, he said, because the neshama is pnimius, they fulfill their mission in the worlds, which is the external of external, through the means of malachim, the angels. So before the Magid, the thinking was, okay, the Yid is a pnimius, and he uses the malachim to fix the world. So it seems almost from that perspective that the Yid has to like find the means of the angel to then invest in creation, working his way outward. But with the Magid, and now that we're learning that what's the pshat that the Yid has the ability to change the world? Because he's the essence of the world. So by him singing song, automatically everything else sings song. He doesn't have to do anything he has to go seek out malachim to make them sing. But if he sings, the angel sings. Because he's the thought that produced that angel. He's the thought that produced the words that create that angel. Yeah. And therefore, continue the see, now it's an automatic thing. Not that he has to go through the angels, he then affects the world. But b'derech mela, because the Yid himself is the source of all of creation, if he's doing what he has to, if he's singing Shira, then automatically the rest of the world sings Shira. Because he, to begin with, is the thought that produced the rest of creation. So by the malachim, and the external of external, which is the rest of creation. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow, Beis Hashem. We're going to get more into this inyan that even, as we've been saying earlier, that even as the world becomes more and more defined as independent, and not just independent, but actually screams to deny Elokus, even in that state, the Oid Ein Sof, the Matat and Tachlis, the Oid Ein Sof exists in all of its Oid Ein Sofness, and even in the Yid who's acting like a Parei. So this is where we're going, Beis Hashem, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, Yidden.